Good evening and welcome to this library talk. The last time we had a hero and a heroine in this library talk. This time, my heroine is a young lady who is India's first woman to win a Green Oscar Award, also known as the Panda Award, which is considered the top most achievement in wildlife and scientific filmmaking. Ashwika Kapur. Ashwika is in fact a qualified science communicator, natural history filmmaker with many years of professional experience in natural history filmmaking. As I said, she's India's youngest and only woman to have won the Green Oscar Award. But Ashwika is really the friendly girl next door. She's the daughter of a very, very dear friend that I knew for many, many years till we lost him very recently. She's the young girl that I've seen moving around her backyard with a duck with a collar and a chain on it when she was a schoolgirl. And so you can see this friendly girl next door who went to the friendly school down the road does not belong to a stereotype. And Ashwika does not belong to a crowd. I'm going to get her introduced to you during the course of today's conversation. So I'm not going to say too much more about her right now, except to say that this was a young lady who tried her hand at film acting, then went on to do English literature, but all the same, all the time had a passionate love for wildlife. So when you have a wildlife passion in you, and yet you have dabbled in the world of cinema, I guess the career that you really end up pursuing is as a wildlife filmmaker. And that's all rolled into one. I have great pleasure in presenting my guest for this evening, Ashwika Kapur. And I'm going to start off by obviously asking her about the thing she's most recognized for, the Green Oscar Award, and the film that won her the Green Oscar, a film called Sirocco. Sirocco, and I leave her to tell you, but I will let you know that Sirocco is about the kakapo. And the kakapo is a plump parrot that lives in New Zealand, which is a country that she did part of her education and training in. When I say she here, I mean Ashwika.
Not the kakapo.
Not the kakapo. But the kakapo is unable to fly. And even more strangely, if I'm not wrong, Ashwika, it's the only nocturnal parrot in the world.
Yeah, it's a nocturnal parrot, correct, it is. It's also the only flightless parrot in the world.
Yes, and it has a very, very difficult method of mating, but I'm not going to go into that. Perhaps first, Ashwika, you're going to tell us about this amazing film, Sirocco, that won you the award, and you might want to share some clips of the film with us as well.
Thank you very much. First of all, big thank you for that wonderful introduction. Normally at clubs, I'm just introduced as, hey, that's Ash's daughter. So that was unusual. So thank you so much. A lot of people here have seen me since I was very, very tiny. So yes, they've also seen the duck on the leash and things like that. Yeah, but thank you so much for the lovely introduction. And yes, you are right. It all began with that fat wobbly parrot in New Zealand, down south in practically what was the last place on the planet. At the time that I was making that film, there were only 125 kakapo parrots in the world. And now apparently there's a little bit more. There's about 135. So they have managed in a few years to be able to increase their population by about 10, which is a big achievement when it comes to the kakapo. They're very useless breeders. So when I was making that film, that was the count. And in the course of trying to find a story on making the kakapo, I realized in my research that there was one kakapo amongst this group of kakapos, and you only get them in one island called Codfish Island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, just off the coast of southern New Zealand. And all of them live there. And that itself is very interesting. But what is even more interesting is that one amongst them was convinced that he's a human being. And he was so completely imprinted on human beings that he didn't actually even realize or recognize his own species. He thought he was a person. And that, of course, made this one kakapo, which itself was, this huge, like you said, a big fat wobbly parrot that looks like a cross between a parrot and a teddy bear, in itself is so funny. But at the same time, when it doesn't even recognize its own species and thinks it's a person, he's an absolute character. So his name is Sirocco, and because he's an absolute character, one thing sort of led to another in New Zealand, and he became an absolute internet sensation. People used to follow him on Facebook and Twitter and stuff. They started in New Zealand quite locally, and then it grew. And then the government of New Zealand took advantage of the situation, realized that here was a bird that was getting very, very popular amongst the people online, and decided to give him a government job. So Sirocco, who's a kakapo, is actually the world's only bird with a government job. And that's the film that I made about his life. It's a rags to riches story, very Oliver Twist, about how he started with very modest beginnings and then shot to superstardom. So I'm going to share my screen now for those who haven't seen Sirocco. We're not going to watch the whole thing, nowhere near it. We'll just watch about the first 1 minute, just to give you an idea of what Sirocco looks like. And you feel free to tell me if you can't hear, or hang on, sorry. I don't know if I did the right thing. Yes, I did, okay.
Dunedin, New Zealand, 2013. A celebrity has just arrived.
Oh yeah, I heard he's coming to Dunedin. It's pretty cool though.
Yeah, I'm a fan. I follow him on Facebook and I get all his tweets on Twitter.
It was a pleasure having the ambassador on board.
His name is Sirocco, and he's an important member of the government.
Pretty cool. You don't often meet a celebrity like him.
We're just making sure that everything is absolutely first class and the airport is safe and secure to allow the VIP entry and exit as smoothly as possible.
The ambassador is chauffeur-driven. It's a 60-minute drive to his 5-star high-security accommodation, where he can finally drop his guard. Meet His Excellency. Not human, but parrot. Sirocco is a very rare bird, a kakapo. It's a privilege to see him in broad daylight because he's nocturnal. His flight has left him tired, so he greets us briefly and retires to catch up on lost sleep. Errol Nye is the...
Right, I hope that was not glitchy. Was that all right?
That was fantastic. In fact, I was hoping you'd show us another minute of that film.
There's lots more, I think. We've only got an hour.
Okay. No, why don't we have another minute? It's fantastic, really.
Sure? Okay,
Yeah,
I don't.
one.
don't
I'm
know.
sure the Bengal Club members would love to see the next minute.
Okay, let me pick another section which is quite funny. Let me show you the part of the film that actually turned Sirocco into superstar celebrity. Would you like to see that?
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, let me show you that. So I'm going to show you that on YouTube. So let me give you a little background. Basically, since you're not watching the film, basically what happened was he was an absolute dud when it came to mating and they required every single kakapo to mate because there's so few kakapo parrots that every one of them matter. And if one is not mating, they're literally declared a dud, which is why the film is called Sirocco, How a Dud Became a Stud. And he was actually dud is a scientific word. When a bird is unable to mate, it's called a dud bird. And so I punned on that.
Interrupt for a minute here, but you have to tell the audience how these Siroccos mate, because they have the most amazing mating technique. They dig a hole in the ground.
I know. They dig a hole in the ground, then they boom, and then they have to wait. Lo and behold, the drama. They have to wait for these flowers, these particular trees to bloom. And only when those trees bloom will they finally decide that they want to get into the mood. And they've tried everything, like conservation. I know this, obviously I know the kakapo recovery team over there, the conservation team. And last year they had a guy playing violin in hope that they would get into the mood. So they are the most useless bunch of birds ever. As much as I love them, they are utterly useless when it comes to, populating that island. Anyway, so coming back to Sirocco, who takes useless to a whole new level because he's imprinted on human beings and he just thinks he's a person. So all he really wants to do is he builds a bowl, but he builds it right out. A bowl is like it's dug into the ground. That's what they build when they're wanting to mate with. But when during mating season, he builds a bowl where the long drop for the toilet is for the rangers. So he can catch the rangers at night. So he's not really interested at all in other kakapo. He's more interested in mating with human beings. So which is highly problematic. I mean, for anyone who's had a dog and know how embarrassing that can be, now just swap that with a kakapo. So now he's obviously behaved like this for many years with the rangers and it's all been very funny and stuff like that, but quite internally. And then what happened was one year, BBC went to film there. And Mark Cowardine and Stephen Fry went to the island and they wanted to see a kakapo. And as luck would have it, of all the kakapo on the island, they encountered Sirocco. And Sirocco, in turn, encountered them. So one thing sort of led to another, and then he ended up sort of behaving in a certain way, and that clip went viral. Then everybody got to know about Sirocco, and he became the superstar celebrity. So he actually shot to superstardom for all the wrong reasons. Let me show you this clip on YouTube. If I can share my screen again, hang on.
While Ashwika gets that going, look at the face of the bird. This is a very special parrot because it has a circle of feathers around each eye. So look at the eyes, and this circle of feathers actually acts like radars. So this circle of feathers around the eye actually is a sound wave focusing
possible to
device.
Describe a creature as looking old-fashioned.
Okay. So, sorry. Should I go on?
Please do. I was just saying this to fill in.
Great.
It ought to be impossible to describe a creature as looking old-fashioned, but that's exactly how Sirocco looks, with his big sideburns and his Victorian gentleman's face.
Oh, yeah. Huge. It's actually nice just seeing him wandering around in the forest undergrowth.
You can see he's got very good camouflage.
He has. That colour is incredible.
So, you know, evolution hasn't entirely rendered him useless.
Hello. You're going to look in the lens.
A typical male, Sirocco is clearly only interested in one thing.
Oh, hello. Hello.
Oh, look at that.
Ow. God, he's got sharp claws.
He's getting a bit frisky.
Ow. Ow.
Do you think it is he's actually attempting a sort of mating ritual? He is.
Oh, must. You are being
shagged.
Or not. Ow. Oh, it's sharp.
Look, he's so happy. Sorry, but this is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. You are being shagged by a rare parrot. He thinks you are. Ow! And he's really going for it. Wow, you've chosen him? Is it actually, you were in pain, aren't you?
That's all right.
Oh, his neck is covered.
Am I?
Hey, parental guidance required for the rest of the film, so we'll stop there.
So yeah, so he decided to do that and then shot to stardom.
So tell us, these kakapos are really endangered, aren't they?
Very, yeah.
And they don't seem to have a very bright future in terms of being able to evolve into a bigger species.
No. It's very much like the giant pandas. I feel like they're like the giant pandas of the bird world. I mean, the chances of them actually being a completely successful species out in the wild again are very, very difficult. But having said that, they're such a special and such a beautiful species that saving them, getting them to a point. So it had come in the 70s, the number of kakapo had come down to 18. And from 18, they've managed to come up to over 150 now, or whatever, 145 or something at the moment. But that seems like a small number, but it's not when it comes to the kakapo. So it's taken a lot of effort. And yeah, one may argue that, you know, you don't, what is the point of saving one species? That is an argument, a scientific argument. There is a school of thought that thinks that way. There is some virtue in that kind of thinking as well, that you'd rather sort of save the habitat rather than focus on special species. But then, I mean, yeah, I don't, yeah, my heart says no. My brain can see the argument, my heart says no.
But has Sirocco found a mate?
No, no. He's not interested.
Okay, while on the subject of mating, Ashwika, next question is going to be, did Thumbelina find a mate?
Thumbelina find a mate? Well, she did. To give away the ending. Yeah, well, for those who don't know, Thumbelina is a story that I made on a very tiny frog. And they are only found in Shillong, again, a very, very endangered species. They're an extremely small frog, so small that the newborns can fit in a single drop of rain. And I've got this lovely shot in the film where there's a little newborn that's sitting inside one drop of rain like it's in a jacuzzi. They're very, very tiny, and you only find them in Shillong. And they make this beautiful sound during the monsoon. But if you ask people in Shillong where that sound is coming from, it's a haunting sound that's, you know, completely engulfs Shillong every monsoon. But yet when you ask people, most people say it must be an insect. They're so small that people don't even actually see them. They're a leaf frog. They live on leaves. And they're called the Xmas frogs because they were discovered on Christmas Day. And the story that I decided to tell, now this was actually, if you don't mind my carrying on, Doc?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So this was actually a very challenging film because, see, when you're making a film on a Sirocco or when you're making a film on a kakapo, they're big, fluffy, I mean, you know, big, plump, cute thing. I mean, they lend themselves to, being camera friendly and being charismatic on screen. Big mammals lend themselves to being charismatic on screen. Lovely birds lend themselves to be charismatic on screen. But this frog, when I was approached by the scientific community and I was asked by the scientists saying that, look, you know, I'm doing research on this frog. Can you please make me a little film? And I didn't want to say no. I wanted to do it. But it was that much more challenging because at the end of the day, to be really honest with you, this frog looked like a bird dropping. It was tiny, it was brown, and it had nothing going for it. So how do you tell a story when it comes to that? But before I come back to that, would you like to see the trailer so that people have a context?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'll just show you the trailer. Yep.
Now I think people will appreciate why I asked the question, did Thumbelina find a mate?
So that was Thumbelina. And so it was an interesting project, very interesting project, because it really pushed me to think beyond the box. And I was like, look, I have to be able to tell the story. Now, what do I do with this frog that looks like nothing on earth? Let's be honest. And so I decided that, look, what's the special thing about it? The special thing about it that she's really small, she's really tiny, and she lives in a big city. So it is a film that is a journey of a very tiny frog, the adventures of a very tiny frog, looking out for her frog prince in a big city. And the other question that I asked myself, and therefore I named it Thumbelina, the other question that I asked myself is, who is going to watch this film? Who are we making this for? Now, when we are children and when we are very young and we are playing around in the grass and we're playing outdoors, that is when we encounter frogs. Adults very rarely, let's be honest, come that close to it. So if at all, in school backyards, in backyards of houses, etc., it's always the children that are going to be encountering an Xmas frog, if at all, out in the wild. So I thought this would be a very good opportunity to make this for the kids of Shillong and make it for a young audience that's going to be able to sort of have a little fairy tale, a little wildlife fairy tale of their own town and own city. To call their own, and therefore I decided to make it for a younger audience, and even the Wildlife Institute of India was quite excited about that, and it worked great because the children loved it. And I have to say that it probably sometimes, oddly enough, even I've seen during wildlife shows, it's sometimes even more popular. It gets even more, kids get even more excited about Thumbelina than they get even about Sirocco also, because it's unexpected, it's a small thing, it's got big challenges, so they tend to quite enjoy that sort of thing.
So while on that subject, Ashwika, tell us, when did you first get attracted to wildlife and to wildlife filming? I remember your dad telling me, I can't have you home because my house is a zoo.
Yeah, that used to happen. Yeah, so I was quite a surreptitious kid that way. I started with like 2 rabbits, and that's where I got my first lessons in multiplication. And of course, a duck on a leash, because I asked mom for a dog and she said no. So the only other animal that I knew with the D at that time when I was 4 years old was duck. And I said, so can I have a duck? She said yes, for some weird reason. And so one thing led to another, and I ended up bringing home all kinds of animals. And I think it was a very instinctive love for wildlife and nature and animals. And I think I might have inherited that from my grandfather, who was the director of the Zoological Society of India. But he died when I was quite young, so he didn't actually get much of an opportunity to teach me very much. But I think it's just in the DNA. As my dad would rightly put it, he was the hyphen in the middle. And he was, but mom and dad were never, they were very tolerant. They would allow it all, but they would never do the cleaning and they ever sort of do the look aftering. It was all up to me. But yeah, so I brought home a lot of animals and fostered them at home. So that was my...
To school?
I did once. It didn't go down well. La Martiniere did not take kindly to a squirrel, in the class. So in my bag. So no, they didn't see the snake, thankfully, but the squirrel was found and it was not well received. So I suspect the snake might have not been well received.
But it wasn't confiscated.
No, I was sent home with the squirrel, if you must know. So,
I would have taken that squirrel every day to school then.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. Oh my God, I didn't think of that.
That's how this interest rather...
Yeah, so that's how it started. And my second weakness has always been for a good story. Always. So, of course, I used to be a child actor in the city when I was growing up. That was great fun. So I was around cameras a lot and I really enjoyed being around cameras. I kind of instinctively learned while I was on set how filmmaking worked. So that kind of got ingrained in me very early in life. And later on, I went on to do English literature. A lot of people think there's a big gap between, I mean, they don't quite easily, very quickly see the link between literature as a literature student and wildlife filmmaking. And then they're like, how did you do that? And actually, not even so much in hindsight, even then I kind of would have known that the way literature, the study of literature opened my mind up to narrative, to storytelling, I would not go back and do anything else as a foundation to becoming a wildlife filmmaker. It absolutely was a game changer in many ways. So it really gave me a strong foundation as a storyteller. So that's how everything sort of came together.
What do you think, Ashwika, are the real challenges of telling a wildlife story? What's the real challenge? Everybody cannot become a David Attenborough, but you're able to become one.
I wouldn't say that, but no way. But yeah, see, the thing is, there's many challenges to wildlife filmmaking. The first and foremost, most obvious challenge is the nature of the filming itself, which means that you're out in the middle of nowhere, you're having to do long hours, you're waking up at 3:30 in the morning. I have spent most of my career, all these 6-7 years that I've been doing this professionally, I have been doing that. I mean, I've spent most of my career, frankly, staring at grass. There's so little that actually happens in the wild. You would know yourself as, you know, a wildlife person yourself. And you need extreme amounts of patience. You need a lot of tenacity. You need to be able to be out there sitting in a hide, sweating, getting eaten up by mosquitoes, freezing in the cold sometimes, frostbites. You just name it. Like, let your imagination run riot and still something new will find you. So the challenges of the kind of filmmaking this is also takes it to a whole new level. It takes a lot of, yes, it takes physical tenacity, but to be really honest with you, look at me, it actually takes more mental strength than physical strength, because you need to really be able to do it. Then again, when you're passionate about something and you really love it, and you love being outdoors, and you really sort of enjoy the wild, the challenges seem like just part of it. Like, somebody once asked me, don't you ever get lonely? And I thought about it, and I said, no, I'm alone in nature, but I'm never lonely. Never, not for 1 second. And it's just how your brain is tuned. So the first challenge really is the nature of the filmmaking. The second challenge is, of course, the fact that you have to be able to be a very good camera person to capture that stuff in very long lens. So that talent is also required to be able to actually capture on such to be able to think on your feet, long lens filming. All of these things are very, very specialized and hard to do. I still think, however, that the hardest thing about nature filmmaking is the story, is the narrative craft. Because once you sort of learn, and once you sort of are able to craft a wildlife documentary into a story, into a lovely narrative, that's where the real winning streak comes. So to me, that is the greatest challenge. And also, when you are able to do it, it's the greatest reward. Yeah.
Okay, Ashwika, my next question might upset some of the audience.
Great.
And I'm well separated from you. Fortunately, there's physical distancing and you can't throw something at me. To look at your lovely hair, and I'm going to ask you, did the gibbon find some nicks in your hair?
It's very sad I can't throw one of my books at you, but so for those who haven't seen the clip, should I share that with them before they think
Please do. And they'll know why I'm asking this question as well.
Right, okay. So before I share my screen, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about this. This was a film that I worked on a couple of years ago for Discovery. I went into the Northeast in search of untold stories, and the Northeast of India is a beautiful part of the country that specializes in untold stories. So I went off backpacking to find a good story, and the story I ended up finding was unbelievable. For those who are unaware, the gibbon is India's only ape species. It's a very rare species of ape. and it's India's only ape species, and you only get them in the northeast of India. And there are many areas now that used to have gibbons, but they don't anymore because of deforestation and a lot of local hunting that has taken place there. And they only exist in very limited pockets now, especially only in one national park. Now, there used to be a great population up above, where Tinsukia sort of meets Burma, that border. There used to be a very good population there at one point. But because of dwindling forests and because of a lot of hunting in that region, the numbers started dropping. And there's this one beautiful village, which has got an even more beautiful name called Margarita. And it's a Singpho village, tribes called Singphos live there. And in that region at one point, there used to be a lot of gibbons. And one thing sort of led to another, and a lot of hunting took place. And then it so happened that they came down to one gibbon family. Now, gibbons are monogamous for life. So they pair up together for life, and then they keep having children, 1 and 2, and they keep leaving. So there was this family of 3, this mother, father, and the son. And then the father and the son got killed by hunters. So the only gibbon that was left in this entire region was this one female gibbon. And she was obviously extremely lonely, because for gibbons, that social interaction is very important for all ape species and monkey species. That is a very important thing. So over time, she slowly started visiting this one house and befriended this one very old tribal man, and they became best friends over the years. And it's a beautiful story. It's about Kali. It's a little long. This is about 4 or 5 minutes. I hope that's okay. And I'll forward a bit in the middle, but have a watch. This is
No,
fun.
we're quite happy to watch the whole thing.
Okay.
It's really very, very touching.
Yeah, you watch it. This is very close to my heart.
This is Kalya. She's a western hulock gibbon, one of the rarest apes in the world. Kalya lives in a forest in northeastern India. Local people say they used to see her with a mate and her offspring. What happened to them? No one knows. Now Kalya is alone. Except she isn't. Kalya has a friend, a man named Ningda. It was he who gave her her name. She lives wild in the trees around his house, but she's always close by. It's not about food, it's about the company. Gibbons are highly social animals and spend hours grooming, touching, and communicating. So in the absence of other apes, it seems Kalya's turned to her human neighbor. Most days she visits for an hour or 2, interacting with Ningda, grooming him and making his space her own. The hulock gibbon has lived in the forests of Assam for millennia. Like most apes, they live in tight-knit troops, family units that live, feed, and breed in the forest canopy. The young stay with their parents until they're old enough to strike out and start a new troop of their own. These apes once ranged far across the northeast of India. But over the past few centuries, people have moved in, transforming the landscape from forest to farmland. Many Hulak gibbon troops have found themselves hemmed in by this human expansion. Villages, roads, and train tracks sectioning off the forest. As family members die off, there are few new apes to meet. Leaving a gibbon like Kalya stranded on the edge of the human world. Her innate drive to socialize has led her to this family. She's clearly in charge. Even the family dogs submit to her grooming. Perhaps hoping they'll get a belly rub in the bargain. Grooming between apes is, in part, a way of building trust and establishing alliances. So this is Kalya's way of signaling that she's accepted this family as her own and receiving assurance back that she is welcome. In short, Ningda's family are surrogate apes. And when visitors come calling, she inspects and grooms them as if she's head of the household.
This is really like an exotic head massage. Yep.
And that includes our film crew.
Let me just clarify that this is a wild gibbon. She lives free. She's not a pet. She just happens to come to this house because she's got habituated to this place. And, well, she loves people, clearly, and people are her family. And she also seems to be finding all kinds of things in my hair, which is slightly worrying. She's using 3 limbs.
This touching connection between an ape and her human may be unusual. But when it comes to modern-day India, cohabitation is the new reality.
Now you know why I wanted to know what she found in your hair.
Nothing.
About India's wildlife, you've made a fabulous film on our forest rangers. And I think they remain the unsung heroes of our attempt to preserve our wildlife. What is your opinion about our forest rangers and what made you make this film on forest rangers?
So I wasn't actually making this film. This was a little different from what I normally do, but I was in front of camera presenting a series, a 6-part series for Discovery Asia, actually, on forest guards. And there's very, very little ever that's been done on forest guards. And in the course of sort of, as wildlife filmmakers, when we go out into the wild and we're doing stuff, we always tend to focus on the animals and we tend to focus on the stories there. And very rarely do we ever turn the camera to see why those animals, why those species, why that place, why those things are there in the first place. Because there's somebody out there who's actually protected it, who's doing a daily job, who's protecting it. So our forest guards across the country, from where else did I go? Kashmir, Andamans, Arunachal, Sundarbans, North Bengal, all of these places. The most important, Assam, Kaziranga actually, even with the rhinos and all the poaching. And all these places, they exist and they thrive because of the foot soldiers out there, the unsung heroes, which are the forest guards. And I cannot tell you the kind of awe, let alone respect, that I've come to have for them after having experienced firsthand what their lives are like.
Do you have some clips about the forest guards you want to share with us?
I don't think it's online, but it's available on Discovery Plus at the moment. That's why.
Okay, fine,
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
We'll have to let the audience see something on their own rather than you showing everything.
Yeah, yeah. It's currently available. It's currently streaming on Discovery Plus. It's called Heroes of the Wild Frontiers.
Oh, great.
And yeah, yeah.
So tell us something. Your hero, talking about heroes, is obviously David Attenborough.
Yes.
Go on. Show us the picture of you with him.
No, must I? How embarrassing. Okay, fine, if you insist. Yeah, I did meet him.
It's not very far away in your laptop.
No, it's not. It's never far away. It's the background of my phone. I mean, it doesn't get more. It doesn't get more. I don't even know if it's here. Actually, there it is. Can you see? Yes, you can.
So what's the elephant called?
The elephant doesn't have a name. You can give it a name right now.
Okay. So you've had some very interesting
Baby Jumbo.
You had some very interesting conversation with David Attenborough recently about pronunciations. Do you want to share that with us?
Yes. So it was very funny. So I'm actually working on another show. So my first thing that I worked with him on was this film on elephants called Jumbo. It was doing a historical natural history documentary. I was in the UK at the time, and I was fortunate enough to have landed up on the crew. Of course, I offered to do anything at that point of time. I said, I will hold an umbrella. I will do anything. Just let me in. So very fortunately, they let me do all the behind the scenes for it. So it was great fun. And well, they say don't meet your heroes, but they're all wrong because he's amazing. Yeah, coming back. Yeah, so right now I'm working on another show that he's presenting, and it's on color, and it's going to be on color in nature, and it's going to be on I think Netflix and BBC. And for that, I think he was with the main producer who's based in the UK, executive producer who's based in the UK. They're doing some voiceover a few days ago. And she called me. So I picked up the phone like a normal call from boss, no problem. So I had a very casual, picked up the phone, and she said, how do you pronounce Himalaya? So I said, like Himalayas in English, I mean, no, in the Hindi pronunciation. I said, okay, Himalaya. So then she said, Himalaya. I said, yeah, Himalaya. Then another voice suddenly came on the phone and said, Himalaya. I was like, oh my God. So I said, yes, Himalaya. And then David Attenborough said Himalaya. And then I said Himalaya. And then we said Himalaya 5 times, and it was magical. And then he hung up. So I just had a very strange conversation with David Attenborough 3 days ago. Yes, on the phone. So life's weird.
Wait to see whether he pronounces Himalaya the right
He's going to do a speech very soon where he's going to say it. So I'm going to watch out and see whether he's actually managed to say it right. Frankly, he nailed it. He got it right like that. So yeah.
You know, for those of you that don't know, Ashwika has done a lot of work closer to home as well.
Yeah.
And I think currently, Ashwika, you're working in our backyard in the Sundarbans, if I'm not wrong.
I am. I'm doing a series in the Sundarbans.
Share with us what you're doing in the Sundarbans, and give us a little trailer about what you're filming.
Yeah. So currently I'm doing a series on the Sundarbans, which short conservation film series. So there's 3 or 4 short films, and one was already released a while ago. It was on the importance of the mangroves, and I don't know if you'll have the time to actually see them. But I can just talk about them. It was about how the mangroves, essentially without the mangroves, Calcutta doesn't exist as far as we are concerned.
That's a fabulous film, and I think it was particularly relevant in the context of Amphan.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we can send the link to everybody because it's on WhatsApp and stuff like that afterwards. So I'd love to send the link to everyone afterwards. Yeah, so it was about the mangroves and how important really the mangroves are in keeping us safe, how it's like this invisible, well, they're just soldiers, basically, wild trees that act like soldiers. They're like the frontier and stops both seawater rise as well as massive storms from absolutely ravaging the city. So that was the first film. Then I was meant to do at least two more films, and of course one of them was not the tiger because it's very difficult in the Sundarbans to actually go chasing the tiger. That would take me a few years, unless of course, Doctor, I'm allowed to share your if you don't mind. May I actually?
Yeah, go on.
Okay, great. So there's this lovely photograph that I was chatting to Doc about a few days ago. I saw one of his pictures of this tiger, and I really wanted him to tell you this story because we were on the topic of forest guards. So I think it's a good time to actually just share that. Just 1 second. Hope I got it right.
I'm going to, though, ask you a question. Why do you not like to photograph big cats?
I leave it to the big people like you.
No, I'm sure you'll get there soon.
No, not really. I'm not even sure if I want to get there, frankly. There's a lot of people who are doing wild big cats. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I suppose if I did encounter a good enough, a nice enough opportunity and a good enough story, I might go for it. But I found very magical stories elsewhere. And there are, frankly, there is a lot of content already on big cats, and people are doing it and they specialize in it. So it's not something that I've ever felt driven enough to chase. If it does come my way at some point, of course, I love big cats. I'll go for it. But having said that, in the natural course of things, I've found that there's so much magic in nature, even in the absolutely unexpected. And I'll show you that in a bit when I talk about the films that I'm making in the Sundarbans. They're also completely unexpected and not about tigers. But having said that, I'd really like you to tell the story behind this photograph. Because it's,
this is an awful photograph of a tiger. I shared this with Ashwika because this is how you don't want to see a tiger in a cage with a tranquilizing dart in the tiger's back. And there's two very interesting stories about this tiger. This was taken on the 1st of January one year when we were in the Sundarbans. And to cut a very long story short, what happened was this tiger strayed into a village and attacked a villager. And one of the sharpshooters, who's a forest warden, was sent, they tranquilized them with ketamine still. And he was sent to tranquilize this tiger. And of course he shot, and he wasn't sure whether the tigress was actually hit or not. And then they somewhat lowered their guard, and this tigress got up and picked up this guy with the gun amongst a group of about 300 people who had gathered on that embankment of the village, and they were on an embankment overlooking a river. And the tigress just charged at this man. With her claws, he took off her thigh, and both of them landed in the river. It was the fact that they both landed in the river that saved this man's life. But of course, when the tigress had leapt, he had shot again, and this was the second dart. And nobody knew whether the first dart had actually hit her or not. But two little interesting stories about this is this man ended up in a hospital in Calcutta. In fact, in the same hospital that my wife works in, and Uttara, my wife went to see this forest warden the next day when he had had major surgery on his thighs and had just recovered consciousness, and asked him, "How are you?" And the first thing he when he regained consciousness, he said is, "Oh, you know anything about the tigress? I want to know how the tigress is. I need to go back because I need to look after this tigress. I think she may have been over-tranquilized." Which she was. And in fact, that's the other part of the story, which is where I got involved, because the when the tigress was unconscious and put in a cage like that, unfortunately being the 1st of January, various television channels started broadcasting that a Project Tiger officer had shot dead a tiger. And the chief of the forest department called up the vet who was holidaying and enjoying a lunch on Park Street with his family. And it would take him 7 hours to get to that spot. So I was made to masquerade as a veterinary doctor, and for the first and only time in my life, I had to assess the coma scale, the level of consciousness of an Indian tiger by getting up on top of this cage. And if you wonder why with my weight I had to get up on top of the cage, it's because you're not allowed to examine these tigers from the side, because if the tiger wakes up and sees you, she will fling herself at you and in the process might get a head injury hitting the rails. So you have to get up on the roof of the cage and examine the tiger. So that's the photograph. But I want to go back to you, Ashwika, rather than go on these.
No, I'm really glad that, you shared that story, because the takeaway for me for that really was how it links back to what I was doing with the forest guards. And like you said, the forest guard was so badly injured by the tiger and yet wanted to know after he was in recovery whether the tiger was okay. And that's exactly the kind of thing that I saw when I was out and on shoot for this series. In the Sundarbans, actually, they faced them. They've come face to face with tigers man-eating 10 feet away, and they've still gone back. Then they've gone back again, and then they've gone back again. And they know every day that they step out, they know that there's a very good chance that they're not going to come back. And they stay for 6-7 months on these floating camps. And these floating camps are literally in the core of the forest and in the middle of the river. And they're literally these boxes that are floating in the middle of nowhere. And they live in places like that for 6-7 months, protecting the wild and protecting this place. And they do it proudly, and they do it with passion, and they do it with dedication, despite the challenges, despite the fact that they get no recognition, very little pay, and it's extremely dangerous. So, hats off to the forest guard who was attacked and then still wanted to know whether the tiger was okay.
And he's back to work as well. So tell us, what are you doing?
In the Sundarbans, the opposite of tiger. So there were lots of boats that were ferrying by me, and they saw me there sitting with a very large camera. I should probably quickly show you a little thing. Nope, that's not the one. Yeah, so there were a lot of boats ferrying by me in the Sundarbans with a big camera, and they were wondering what on earth I was doing in that position that I could not have been filming a tiger. What I was doing for hours on end, staring at nothing with a chair dug into the mud like that, and eating my meals like that. So that position and that posing was my office for a long time. I was making a film on mud skippers and fiddler crabs, which is for those who don't know, it's a very tiny fish that lives out of water, a mud skipper. They live in the mud. They're very, very cute. These films haven't yet been released, so I can show you a little bit of it, but only just the beginning, if you would like, or you could wait for the films to come out, which is going to come out sometime.
We'll see a clip, and we promise not to record it. Not with our telephones, at least.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to come out in September, so it's not long wait. Wait, let me just show you a bit. The tidal mudflats of the Sundarbans. Barren at first glance. But look closer, and this great expanse teems with the strangest creatures. A secret world of tiny animals revealed by the waning tide. A mud skipper. No ordinary fish. They spent most of their lives on land. A fish out of water. Their fins look like elbows, which they use to drag themselves along. Their gill chambers are their scuba diving gear. Instead of air, they carry their personal supply of water. And that's how they breathe on land.
Amazing creatures. What made you choose a mud skipper of all the diversity of the Sundarbans?
Well, they're fascinating, and they're everywhere, and they're fascinating. And I thought that they would make a really cute subject. Of course, I had no idea what suffering those damn things are going to put me through, because to be honest, actually, really to be honest, I've filmed in 55 degrees. I have filmed in minus God knows what degrees, and it's been horrible in many situations. It's been difficult, but the Sundarbans mudskipper shoot was the hardest shoot I have ever done. Because the thing is, with these mudskippers, there are certain places where they are more skittish, and there are certain places where they are bolder because they're bigger. And to get to those places, first of all, you have to wade through waist deep mud. And that's literally like pulling yourself through a pudding. And you're going through that mud with equipment and everything. You're carrying that stuff, first of all. Then you've reached. Great, fantastic. You've reached this point. They've all gone into their burrows. They've disappeared. What do you have to do next? You have to plant yourself there and sit really quietly, because you're filming macro. For macro, you have to be very close to the animal. So you've got to be very quiet, and you've got to be very still. And you just have to sit and wait and wait and wait and wait for the animal to get used to you. So I was for hours, on day one, I didn't have a chair. Second day, I organized a chair, which was easier because I just dug the whole chair into the mud. But for hours, my entire legs were inside the mud. And this mud, unfortunately, I mean, as horrendous as the sun, is full of these little flies called midges, which bite the hell out of you. They're not exactly, they won't kill you. Nothing will happen from it, no diseases. But oh my God. So between pins and needles, midges, and you're like stuck in the mud for 8 hours. It was one of the most challenging shoots, and for what? For mudskippers. So that's what I mean with wildlife filmmaking. You know, it really takes a little bit of madness to be able to actually do that. But the payoff was fantastic, because there were two little films. One is on mudskippers and how they are territorial and how they fight with each other to keep their territories. And the second film is a love story about two fiddler crabs. Fiddler crabs are called fiddler crabs because they have one large claw which looks like a violin. A fiddle. So it's a little love story about a fiddler crab that follows a female around, and it's set to classical music. It's quite cute. So these are the two films that came out of that 1 week of utter masochism.
Fantastic. And what's your future projects? Tell us something about what you're...
Now, the next one, actually, let me just finish on the Sundarbans. Another one that's really exciting. Now, we were talking about the kakapo being one of the rarest species in the world, and being, 100 and something, 135, 45, whatever they are right now. But you'd be surprised, a lot of people would be surprised to know that we have a species right here in our backyard in the Sundarbans, which is one of the 5 most rarest turtles in the world. And they are called the Batakur baska. And these are extremely rare. There are literally only 50 known adults in the world. That's it. And they are right here in our backyards, and we don't even know about them. And so my next film actually is on this turtle species and what's going on, the story of how they went practically completely extinct. Nobody knew where they were. Nobody had seen one in years, and how one small population was accidentally rediscovered. And from that rediscovery, how they went on to breed them. And now they're coming to a point where they want to start releasing them slowly. So this is happening 3 hours away from where we are. And it's happening very much by our own forest department. It's happening with the Turtle Survival Alliance in a collaboration. And it's a very inspiring little thing. And yeah, so that's the next one that's going to come out. And then, of course, there's other stuff in the long-term pipeline, which...
What was the camera you were using?
I use a Sony. I have a Sony FS7, so that's good for video. Sony does very well with
And
video.
when you're doing the stills?
I don't do stills. I don't have the time. Yeah, I mean, because I'm mostly doing a lot of stuff on my own, the filming, and I'm constantly writing stories side by side. I'm thinking and doing production. With wildlife filmmaking, as you know, the crews are very small because we can't go with 20 people. So you've got to do everything by yourself. So honestly, I rarely get the time to do stills. If I you know, it's a privilege if you do. It's nice to have somebody there, one crew person. If there's one other person in the crew who knows how to use a still camera, then you're lucky enough to get some stills. Otherwise, we just pull it out of the video.
They can get some still cameras of the photographer taking the video.
Yeah, so there was some behind the scenes that a friend who was on the boat, as well as the boatman, took some nice behind the scenes. So they're very used to it in Sundarbans. They love taking. They're with tourists all the time. So they're good with their still cameras and some behind the scenes. So there are a few pictures of me stuck in the mud, so which they found very amusing because, well, I was suffering. They were all on the boat, dry and happy. And they used to just look at me in awe, saying, "Ki mata kharab." So madam and puro mata kharab. I'm like, "Ah, shita shotti." So that's how it used to go.
I think you're used to that sentence from school.
Yeah, totally. And actually, it's very funny. It's a really funny story. But this boatman actually thought I was completely mad because I was going out, getting bitten up, doing this for days. And at one point, he said, "We'll get off here, but I don't know how to say this, but you know, you've got to be careful because there's one resident crocodile that stays in this part. So when you're crossing, go quite fast." I mean, this was the water part that we had to just quickly cross. Shallow water, not much, but I had to quickly cross it. So I said, "Oh, acha," and I got off the boat and I crossed. Okay, so he really thought I was insane that I did not react to this, and I just crossed, like whatever. I can't be helped. I gotta go. And that evening, and lo and behold, of all things so this is the most embarrassing thing that I'm going to admit to today, of all things in the boat, out came a cockroach. And I have the most irrational fear of normal domestic cockroaches. And I literally was going to jump right into crocodile-infested water if he did not kill that thing right then. And he's looking at me in utter shock, saying, "You get down from the boat into crocodile water without flinching, and you're seriously practically crying because there's a cockroach in the bathroom." I said, "Yes, you will kill it or you will get rid of it now." So so Sundarbans, that crew, the boat crew, really think I'm probably insane. But yeah, that is my only confession for today, that I cannot deal with domestic cockroaches.
Have you had close encounters with animals during...
With cockroaches?
I didn't mean cockroaches, but anything little bigger and more...
many times.
More than a cockroach? Yeah,
I have. Let me show you one little picture. I almost brought home a baby Russell's viper. While I'm sharing my screen, you might want to... if you want to tell them about what the Russell viper can do. Where is that picture gone? If I can find it.
I think the Bengal Club audience knows what a Russell viper can.
Yeah, but this was a baby one.
What is what it did do.
No, yeah. So I put my camera, this is the stills, I put my camera on the ground while I was filming. And that's a big no-no. Yeah. Can you see it?
Yeah, it's a Nikon. I can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
one of the Ds.
No, this is the 5D. But yeah. So as you can see, there's a little baby Russell's viper that managed to sneak itself into the base plate between the camera. It was ridiculous because I had put my camera on the ground and I was filming with the bigger camera, and I put the stills on the ground.
To fit it onto the tripod after that.
No, but I was fortunate enough to actually see something going under it, because if I hadn't, I would have brought it home. And for those who don't know, a baby Russell's viper or a baby venomous snake probably does more damage, because a bigger snake sometimes gives you something called a dry bite, which means that it's confident enough to just scare you and let you go. But a baby snake is always, its defense is offense. It's always on the defense. So if it feels threatened in any way, it's going to give you all its venom, and you're in serious trouble. So a Russell viper can get rid of a few of us at the same time with that much venom. And I was going to bring it home, and thankfully I saw something going under it. So I looked around, etc., and then suddenly saw this thing underneath. Otherwise, it would have come home and may not be having this webinar right now.
It
But
wouldn't have been the first animal to have come to your 12th floor apartment.
yeah, I didn't bring home venomous snakes at that age. But yeah, but that's just
How
one.
popular were you with your neighbors, given the number of animals that you brought into the gated
I had
community?
a very tolerant neighbor downstairs who used to once in a while return my chickens and my ducks that would fly down, and also tolerate all kinds of poo that would end up in her drain. They were quite kind, actually, frankly, but they drew the line when the little chick that I brought home from the market turned into a full-fledged rooster and would wake up all of Shoptapuni at 4 o'clock in the morning. They did not take kindly to that. So I think there were a few letters that were received by Dad. And then one day I came home from school and it had apparently flown away. So I think, yeah,
I
we know
think
what
those of us
happened.
that have been seeing
Lunch.
Ashwika's works for the last hour now would understand why Ash was such a proud father. And he had nothing to talk about except his daughter if you engaged him in a conversation, and how right he was. Ashwika, it's been
That means a lot coming from you. Thank you so much.
It's been amazing speaking to you. And I'm going to just end with one of your own quotations. And I'm going to tell the audience about the best line that I got from one of your TED Talks. And you said, and I'm quoting you, you said, "I don't believe in straight lines." What do you mean? And did you ever believe in straight lines, or do you still don't believe in them?
No, I don't think I do, because I think this planet has a lot to offer, and life, if you are willing to let it offer, has a lot to offer. And once you've made a very straight plan in terms of what you want to do next and next and next and next, you're automatically limiting the magic. So it's not like I don't plan. It's I do, but I also am open to sort of seeing where the next sort of bit of magic comes from, whether a Thumbelina comes along my way, or whether I decide instead of I decide to do a Mudskipper film. I don't quite believe in going from one thing to another thing predictably. And that's why when I left college and I finished literature, no matter how much I enjoyed the subject and all of that, the next step would have been to do something academic, but I didn't. I didn't, because I knew that was not where I wanted to go with it. And instead I packed a bag and disappeared to Africa. And I'm glad I did. I'm really glad I did, because it was clearly my calling. And similarly, so I don't know where I'm headed, but it's definitely not going to be a straight path.
And it's definitely
it's going to be a little forest path somewhere where I have to find my way.
And then talking about straight lines, I understand that geometry and mathematics were not your favorite subjects at any point.
No, that part of Dad's brain I did not inherit at all. He was I was there's no easy way to say this. I was horrendous. So I was terrible at math, and I continue to be terrible at math proudly. But yeah, that was quite something. But yeah, maths teacher was not at all a big fan of mine, though. Having said that, she did call me on national TV after she was quite unkind to me in school, frankly, but she called me on national TV at one point to congratulate me. So I was like, revenge has been taken. So yeah, fun things like that have happened in adult life. But no, I'm not a maths person at all.
Fantastic. Ashwika, we promised to talk to you for an hour, although we could carry this conversation on for another hour easily. Yeah. I have to say you've had an amazing impact on our members of the Bengal Club, and amongst the various congratulatory messages that are in the chat box, there's one very interesting message which says, perhaps Bengal Club should consider taking some members who are below the age of 35. So don't reveal your age, I'm not going to ask it. And all I'm going to say is, it's been a great evening.
Thank you
Ashwika, Ashwa in Sanskrit means horse. Really? And you've been, yes, and your motion in the world of wildlife filming has been as swift as a horse. May you continue on your journey. And this little girl next door, as I knew her, is now, as you can understand, one of the unsung heroes of our wildlife preservation. It's been a great evening, Ashwika.
Thank you much.
Very, very much.
Thank you so much.
Tell me what you want from the Bengal Club and I'll have it. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Thank you. So nice to see some of your faces, all of Dad's friends. Thank you.
Great.